Hi there. Filming on House of the Dragon Season 3 moved to Surrey this past week, which is in southeast England, around where they filmed the Battle of Rook's Rest for Season 2. And we've gotten some good quality spy photos out of this, showing the main Hightower army's camp. This is the biggest land army in the entire war on either side, and features not just the Hightowers, but other noble houses and characters involved in the Reach campaign of the war. What's continually surprised me as filming has progressed is just how much detail they're going into in the Reach subplot, which they could have easily glossed over. Instead we're getting a fair amount of attention on this. Now, in a separate video, I just went over the big news of the day, which is how we just got our first spy footage of Daeron Targaryen, Daeron the Daring, which we've been waiting forever for. But in the days leading up to that, we got some other nice spy pics of the Hightower camp, giving us other clues, other things that are worth picking apart, and other characters. So, you see, I'm posting this out of order as a follow-up to the Daeron one, even though that was the climax of the filming this week. And I wanted to jump into that first to get everyone's attention. This is other things that are going on in Daeron's storyline in the Hightower camp. To start with, spy photos show Daeron's dragon Tessarion is there. Well, we have spy photos of a rendered dragon. No, there's spy photos of a team of stuntmen holding up the dragon blue screen rig. And the reporter's saying that it's clearly the actors we could tell were reacting to and pretending that the dragon was actually moving and doing things. So Tessarion will be present in these scenes, not just flying off-screen to save money, but we'll have to see how they integrate that. Another thing of note, though, is in the shots with Daeron himself, like I said, Ormund Hightower is clearly there too. He's talking to him. It's a clear enough shot you can tell it's actor James Norton, who we know is cast for it. There's really only one other Hightower knight who takes his helmet off in that scene. And he's got a big sword strapped to his back. And this has led to speculation that it's possible this is bold Jon Roxton, the fiercest knight in the Hightower army, carrying his Valyrian steel sword, the aptly named Orphan Maker. Now, we know that they announced Roxton is played by Joplin Sibtain. Earlier this week, again, I'm going backwards. Earlier this week, we saw them constructing some buildings around the Hightower camp, which matched the architectural style of some we saw in the Leavesden Studios backlot a couple of weeks ago. That clearly this isn't the same style as King's Landing. It's not King's Landing, that these are towns in the Reach. Possibly more than one town, as they're camped outside of Longtable, or outside of Bitterbridge, or wherever they're going to play that, or out near the Honeywine at the beginning of it. Maybe more than one, but probably ultimately Tumbleton itself, which is in the northeast of the Reach. That we already saw this style in prop sets they were building in Leavesden Studios and said this is assuredly Tumbleton, it's not King's Landing. And reliable reports have told us that the season ends with the Battle of Tumbleton. And we do know who's directing the final episode. Andrei Perec, who's returning from Season 2, would be directing that. We're pretty sure it's Tumbleton. So all this is proceeding as we thought. It's just nice to see it coming together. Mostly I'm posting this video just for these gorgeous spy photos of the Hightower camp in general. Now that it's set up, of these extras in full armor. And we know what Hightower soldiers look like for the past 2 seasons, but it's, the fully armored Hightower guy on a horse next to a pavilion is just interesting. Thankfully, though, much like at Rook's Rest, I love this mentality they approach this with, that they're not trying to simplify the story for, what did Benioff and Weiss say, soccer moms and football players, but no, we want it to be this rich, deep world that has a lot of detail in it. Like, imagine all the detail is crammed into Andor and stuff just in the background. No, it makes it a richer experience. So instead of just there's the Stark side and the Lannister side, No, show that they're composed of vassals who are actually different sigils and different uniform styles and everything. So at Rook's Rest in Season 2, it wasn't just, here's the Hightower army, but you see it's got vassal houses in it. The Darklands, the Rosbys, the Stokeworths. And that's even more important in the Reach storyline, because while the vassals of the other great houses pretty much fall in line, like all the Stark ones follow the Starks, all the ones in the Westerlands follow the Lannisters, the Reach is so divided that there's an entire separate front of the war between Rhaenyra and Alicent supporters in the Reach. It's this civil war within a civil war, that the North and South halves of the Reach turn on each other. And they did start setting this up in earlier seasons. That the Hightowers are the most powerful vassal house in the Reach, wealthier than some great houses. I mean, they rule Old Town, the second city of the entire continent, but the Hightowers are not the official rulers of the Reach. Technically, that's the Tyrells. The Hightowers dominate the south of the Reach, but the north parts of the Reach don't like them acting like they're their overlords when they're not. Like, we swore oaths to the Tyrells, not to you. So houses like the Beesburys and Caswells turn on the Hightowers. And this was set up in 2 scenes in Season 2, when Orwyle tells Alicent there is war in the Reach. The Beesburys have taken up arms against the Hightowers for their lord's demise. That was episode 6. Their lord's demise. Kristen killed him at the council table. But then next episode, episode 7, when Aemond is with his council right before Ulf buzzes the city with Silverwing, the Green Council is giving him a report saying the Hightower army has slowed to a crawl, still in the Reach, because the Beesburys and other houses allied with them have surrounded the Hightowers on 2 sides. But the good news is that Daeron's dragon Tessarion has just taken to wing, and with a dragon rider now in the Hightower army, they'll be able to finally break through. They'll be invincible now and start heading north. That was major setup for Season 3. That's all in there. They were doing this. I don't know if people were following along with everything, but I'll do a more detailed report on this when I get more info, but houses that sided against the Hightowers were Beesbury, Caswell, also Rowan, and Tarley. The Tarleys sided against them. In the books, we know that the Redwynes were staunch Green supporters. They actually show that in Season 1, that there's Redwynes hanging around with the Lannisters and Hightowers at Alicent during the hunt. But during the war, the Tyrells were neutral, that their lord was only a baby, so his regent mother said, we're neutral, you guys figure this out, vassals choose who they will to side with. But in these new spy photos, we got great looks at the costumes and sigils for 2 other houses in the Reach. Houses who have never appeared on screen before prominently by name. House Florent and House Fossaway. I mean, they might have been, if you're going to pick at me in the comments, they might have been in the background, but technically the Blackwoods and Brackens were name-dropped in Game of Thrones once or twice, but a TV-only viewer would have no idea who they were or their significance. You had to wait for House of the Dragon Season 2 to really hammer home that they're these 2 feuding families in the Riverlands. But in the Reach here, we have House Florent, whose sigil is a red fox with purple lapis lazuli flowers surrounding it on ermine, which is, stoat fur. It's got the dappled with black lines on white. And then House Fossaway, whose sigil is a red apple on gold. Funny thing is, we did get Florent heraldry in Game of Thrones, in the background, but it was on screen, since Season 1. I mean, they weren't prominently featured as a faction. There were characters you'd have to look up. A TV-only viewer wouldn't know that Stannis' wife was born a Florent, or that Sam Tarley's mother was a Florent. Yes, Shireen and Sam are second cousins. But you can see here that they redesigned the Florent heraldry. It does not look like what it did in Game of Thrones. That it used to be a red fox circling its own tail. Now it's a red fox rampant. That's rearing up, rampant. I like this more because it it looks more like real medieval heraldry in that style. It looks more like what I'm used to seeing. As for House Fossaway with the red apple on gold, well, their castle is Cider Hall. That they're a major apple producer and cider producer. They have a lot of apple orchards and make a lot of cider. Well, in the main A Song of Ice and Fire novels, there are two branches of House Fossaway, because there's a younger branch who took a green apple as their sigil. Green because, well, we're the younger branch, we're a green apple, it's not ripe yet. But the red apple Fossaways and green apple Fossaways haven't split apart yet. They weren't split apart yet by the Dance of the Dragons. That happened later. For the answer to that, you'll have to see Season 1 of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, which comes out before House of the Dragon Season 3, if you think about it. Weird that now we're going to have lore overlap like that we're going to see the green apple Fossaways splitting off the red apple ones in A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and then a couple of months later see just the red apple ones, because the green ones aren't there yet. Now, there is no definitive listing of which side every house was on in the books, so I had to check to see if the Florence or Fossaways were mentioned as, is this an invention of the show that they were on the Hightower side, or are they just guessing due to lack of evidence? No real spoilers here, but turns out one of the commanders in the Hightower army was Owen Fossaway. So yeah, it makes sense. They were Greens, they were in the Hightower army. And as for the Florence, they were not mentioned at all in this time period one way or the other in Fire and Blood in the book. But then the Season 2 premiere, if you remember, established that Alicent Hightower's dead mother was actually named Allery Florent. Up to this point, we had no idea who her mother was. That was a major question. I just assumed she was a red wine, because they're staunch allies. No, she was actually a Florent. I actually don't think this was a spur-of-the-moment decision either. That fans noticed that going back to Season 1, remember when she was young before she was married, Alicent's original iconic dress she was introduced in kind of makes her match the color scheme of House Florent. This auburn red hair, like the red fox, surrounded by lapis lazuli purple-blue dress. You can see when I'm putting it side by side here that, yeah, I really hope that was intentional. It seems intentional. I'd have to ask. But yes, it seems both the Fossaways and Florence were on the Hightower side in the book, so this tracks with that. Oh, and a couple of new spy photos just came out from this set of filming, showing soldiers who are clearly wearing the sigils of House Peak. Now, we don't have any casting news on Unwin Peak yet. He's a major character. He might not even be in this season. We haven't even seen the name on scripts or anything. We hope he's in it, but we don't know. But these are the three black castles on orange of House Peak. Well, at this point in time, they actually still have three castles. They have three major castles: Starpike, Dunstanbury, and Whitegrove. But later on in history, because they sided with the Blackfires, they get stripped of the other two castles, but they still use the three, so that's a whole thing. They come up again in Dunk and Egg, but here's also House Peak, so we have at least three vassal houses that if they weren't willing to devote a lot of time and development to the Reach subplot, they wouldn't be putting this much effort into rounding out the vassal houses that are in the Hightower army. That clearly they put enough effort in that they want to make use of it. We haven't seen spy photos yet, but we'll probably see the Beesburys in Season 3. The Honeywine won't be a major set piece, but we should see some of it. Just to introduce Daeron and show he's formidable. We'll see the Beesburys, and they mention them by name twice in Season 2, but they did spend time setting up the Caswells of Bitterbridge in Season 1. Will we see that, or are they going to cut it? Because the other thing was... Will they at least name drop the Caswells or with the Beesburys? I don't know. The Rowans are really important in the books, but they haven't really been mentioned by name as much, even in House of the Dragon. Are they going to say they were one of the other big vassals fighting the Hightowers were the Rowans? I like to hope we'll at least get them mentioning the Tarleys, because the Tarleys were fighting the Hightowers in the book. And they should, not just because, it's name recognition for Game of Thrones fans. Why wouldn't they? Given a choice between Tarly and Rowan, I understand that they'd mention Tarly because it's something TV-only audience is familiar with, but also that Ormund Hightower's wife is a Tarly. Sam Tarly. Samantha Tarly. Well, she's his second wife. She's young enough to be his daughter, but thankfully he left her back in Old Town safely guarded by his eldest son and heir, so nothing will go wrong with that. But in terms of how many houses we're getting from the Reach, I am openly surprised that they're even having, maybe they're not even named in dialogue, but just having people carrying Florent and Fossaway heraldry on their shields is a level of detail they didn't need to do. That we're actually getting significant attention to this. They're not skimping on the Reach storyline. In terms of the amount of screen time it's getting, obviously there's the Bitterbridge stuff with Maelor that we think they're cutting, that's a whole, pretty sure they're cutting, that's a whole separate thing, but that's not a time thing, that's a we didn't want another child murder thing. But if you think, it's because they don't care, I think they are devoting screen time to this. They're not rushing through it. They made an adaptation choice with the other thing. But other than that, every step of the way, I've been surprised they didn't need to cast Jon Roxton, and they did. They didn't need to cast all these other things in other houses. They have. And the more I see, the more optimistic I am about the Reach subplot in Season 3.